What if I told you that some people can spot your biggest weakness within minutes of meeting you? They're not reading your mind. They're watching your reactions. The way you respond to pressure, criticism, and disrespect tells them everything they need to know. And if you miss these hidden tests, you could be giving away your power without even realizing it. Today, you'll discover the 3 signs someone is testing your weakness and how to stop them instantly. The first sign someone is testing your weakness is that they repeatedly disrespect small boundaries. At first, it doesn't seem serious. Maybe they interrupt you while you're talking. Maybe they constantly arrive late. Maybe they borrow things without asking. Maybe they make small jokes at your expense. Each incident seems minor, almost too small to address. And that's exactly why it's effective. Because this isn't usually about the behavior itself. It's about your response. Imagine someone cuts you off while you're speaking. You stop talking. They do it again later. You stop talking again. After a few repetitions, they've learned something. They've learned that your boundaries are flexible. They've learned that you'll tolerate behavior that makes you uncomfortable. And most importantly, they've learned that there are no consequences. People often think respect disappears because of one major event. But in reality, respect is often lost through dozens of tiny moments where someone pushes a little and you give a little. Then they push again and you give again until eventually the relationship develops an imbalance. What's fascinating is that many people aren't even consciously aware they're doing this. Human beings naturally test limits. Children do it. Employees do it. Friends do it. Partners do it. Everyone does it to some degree. We're constantly trying to understand where the boundaries are. The question isn't whether people will test them. The question is whether you'll enforce them. And here's where most people make a mistake. They think enforcing boundaries means becoming aggressive. It doesn't. Aggression often signals insecurity. True confidence is calm. True confidence is simple. True confidence doesn't require a speech. When someone repeatedly crosses a line, a calm response communicates far more power than an emotional reaction ever could. Because confidence isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. And when people realize their small boundary tests aren't working, they often move on to something else. Which brings us to the second sign. Someone begins provoking emotional reactions. This is one of the most common weakness tests in human behavior. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who constantly says things that seem designed to get a reaction? Maybe they criticize you unexpectedly. Maybe they challenge your decisions. Maybe they compare you to others. Maybe they bring up sensitive topics at convenient moments. At first glance, it appears random, but often there's something deeper happening. They're checking your emotional stability. Because emotional reactions reveal information. If someone can make you angry with a simple comment, they've learned something. If someone can make you defensive with one question, they've learned something. If someone can make you doubt yourself with one opinion, they've learned something. Your reaction becomes data, and that data tells them how much influence they have over your emotions. This is why emotionally intelligent people are so difficult to manipulate. Not because they never feel emotions. Everyone feels emotions. The difference is that they don't immediately surrender control to those emotions. Imagine 2 people receiving the exact same criticism. One instantly becomes defensive. Their voice changes. Their posture changes. They begin explaining themselves. The other remains calm. They listen. They think. They respond only if necessary. Which person appears stronger? Which person appears harder to control? Which person appears more confident? The answer is obvious, yet most people continue giving away emotional control every single day. Here's something important to remember. When people are testing your weakness, they often aren't interested in the topic they're discussing. They're interested in the reaction they're creating. The conversation is just the vehicle. The emotional response is the destination. That's why some arguments seem to go nowhere. That's why some people keep repeating the same criticism. That's why some individuals seem unusually focused on getting a response. Because once they know what triggers you, they know where your vulnerabilities exist. And vulnerabilities are valuable information. The strongest response isn't silence because you're afraid. It's calmness because you're in control. There's a massive difference. One comes from weakness. The other comes from strength. And when someone realizes they can't easily control your emotions, something interesting happens. The dynamic changes. Suddenly, they're forced to engage with you differently. Suddenly, the shortcuts stop working. Suddenly, respect begins to appear. But there is one more sign. And in many ways, it's the most revealing of all. The third sign someone is testing your weakness is that they constantly seek your approval while subtly withholding theirs. This one is incredibly powerful because it's often disguised as normal interaction. At first, everything seems harmless. You share an idea. They act unimpressed. You accomplish something. They barely acknowledge it. You express an opinion. They question it. Yet somehow, they always position themselves as the person whose approval matters. And without realizing it, you begin chasing validation. You start explaining more. You start proving more. You start seeking recognition. And that's exactly what the test was designed to create. Because the moment someone can make you dependent on their approval, they gain influence. Think about how many people spend their lives trying to convince others of their worth, trying to prove they're smart enough, successful enough, interesting enough, capable enough. The need for validation is one of the strongest forces in human psychology. Everyone wants acceptance. Everyone wants respect. Everyone wants recognition. But people who understand social dynamics know that the person seeking approval usually has less power than the person granting it. That's why weakness tests often revolve around validation. If someone can make you constantly seek their approval, they've learned that your confidence depends on external feedback, and when confidence depends entirely on external feedback, it becomes fragile. Because now other people control how you feel about yourself. This creates a dangerous cycle. The more approval you seek, the less confident you appear. The less confident you appear, the more approval you seek. And the cycle continues. Confident people break this cycle, not because they believe they're perfect, not because they think they know everything, but because their self-worth isn't determined by one person's opinion. They can listen to criticism without collapsing. They can hear disagreement without panicking. They can be misunderstood without desperately chasing validation. And that level of emotional independence changes everything. When someone realizes you don't need their approval to feel secure, their ability to influence you dramatically decreases. Now, let's connect all three signs together. Someone crosses small boundaries. Someone provokes emotional reactions. Someone manipulates approval and validation. At first, these may seem like separate behaviors, but they're actually trying to answer the same question. How strong is this person's sense of self? Can they maintain boundaries? Can they control their emotions? Can they trust their own value? Because when those three things are missing, manipulation becomes easy, pressure becomes effective, influence becomes effortless. But when those three things are present, the game changes completely. People quickly discover that intimidation doesn't work, emotional bait doesn't work, validation games don't work, and suddenly they treat you differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because your behavior naturally earned it. Here's the truth most people never hear. Strength isn't loud. Weakness often is. Weakness feels the need to constantly defend itself. Weakness feels the need to prove itself. Weakness feels the need to react to everything. Strength doesn't. Strength remains centered. Strength remains calm. Strength chooses responses instead of reflexes. And that's why recognizing weakness tests is so important. The goal isn't to become suspicious of everyone. The goal isn't to assume bad intentions everywhere. The goal is awareness, because awareness gives you choices. The moment you recognize a test, you stop reacting automatically. You stop giving away information. You stop surrendering control. And you start responding from confidence instead of fear. The next time someone pushes a small boundary, pay attention. The next time someone tries to provoke a reaction, pay attention. The next time someone makes you feel like you need their approval, pay attention. Because those moments reveal far more than words ever could. And remember this: people can only use your weaknesses against you when they remain invisible to you. The moment you see them clearly, they begin losing power. The moment you understand the game, you stop playing it on someone else's terms. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's usually the one who knows exactly who they are and refuses to let anyone else define it.